This is John Batty. I'm a retired physician who specialized in internal medicine. I graduated from the Cook Junior College, and after taking physics in Boulder, I was admitted to the University of Nebraska College of Medicine. This was in 1934. Down for sort of to see what it was like at the university in the medical school, which was in Omaha. And there I pledged Phi Rho Sigma, and that was my residence for the 4 years. Medical school was just across the street. The school there was very good. We had good training. The professors in the clinical 2 years were all practicing physicians in Omaha. The staff of the hospital was full-time for the first and second years. The first year we took bacteriology, anatomy, embryology, and one was called organology. Second year we went a little bit higher. We went into physiology and biochemistry were the major two, and then we'd had a course in physical diagnosis. This continued to our time of our graduation, when we were expected to find an internship for then before we really were qualified as physicians. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to the University of Chicago at the Albert Merritt Billings Hospital, which was the hospital of the University of Chicago. It was associated with the Bob Roberts and the Chicago Lying In. The first 2 years I lived in the hospital, and in the third year I'd been married. I got married and moved. And joined or rather continued my program by joining the chest department, which is the head of which was Dr. Robert Block. The course in chest was really interesting. We had lots of tuberculosis, and in those days, and no particular treatment other than how to collapse the cavities. But I also had periods with cardiology. And you wanted to know something about the electrocardiogram, or the electrocardiograph that we used at that time. Well, that was a little machine about 10 or 12 inches square and probably 18 inches long, and was most unique. When the heart beats is stimulated by electrical impulse that comes from the auricular node, and it goes through the auricles into the ventricles and sets up the timing so that everything works together. The auricles contract, the ventricles contract, and the blood goes out. But this is done by electricity from the sino-auricular node, it's called. And this impulse can be picked up, and was picked up, by the electrocardiograph. It was years in development. The first one was a massive piece of equipment. At the time I arrived at the scene, it was a little machine about, I think about 10 inches square and maybe 18 inches long, and it was, what it consisted of was a very, very fine wire that was that you could hardly see, and it was situated between two magnets, and the current from the heart, the electric current from the heart that made the heart beat was picked up, run through that small wire, and it changes the polarities to a certain extent. Maybe polarity isn't the word. But anyway, that the wire would move back and forth, and the movement of that was photographed on a photographic plate, or rather on a photographic strip, which is probably 1.5 inches wide and of indefinite length. And this was called the electrocardiogram. They had several different leads, but the leads were placed, I use the word lead is actually what we called it. It was electrodes that were placed on the two arms and the left leg, and then there was one placed at various places over the heart. Originally there was just the 3 leads on the extremities, and then they had the chest leads, and there were just 4 of them at the time that I'm talking about now. The strip of paper went, sensitized paper would go through a little machine back of this little wire, and photograph the movement, and then it was taken out and into the dark room of the X-ray department, where it was developed, just like a chest film or any other X-ray film. And it came out as a crisp. It had to dry, and they brought it out, and we looked at it. This continued through the time I was in McCook, came to McCook, but it wasn't long before they were able to do it differently and record it on as a photographic change on paper, and it was the electrodes picked up the current as a heart, as the paper moved, and it came out directly, and you read it immediately, rather than having to wait for it to develop, and it was a lot easier to mount. And that's continued to, I think, until the present time. Now, how it's done now, I'm not sure. I haven't seen an electrocardiogram for a long time. But that's the way it was, I would say, beginning probably in about 1950, 51. And we immediately got one of those, and we used them ever since. And we're still using them now. I think probably they're much more sophisticated, but I really haven't seen one. Originally we thought it was a wonderful thing, and it was. And they still take the leads from the arm extremities, and then they have the one that's over the heart, and you can even put the leads in the back. You could have an esophageal lead. You can put it down in the esophagus, back of the heart. You can pick it up the film, the impulse there. So there are many different patterns that you can get.
What were you looking for when you were reading the printout?
For alterations in the current going through the heart muscle. If you had a heart attack, that means that the muscle was involved in it. It wouldn't conduct the electrodes, or that wire, or it's whatever they use now, the same normally. Then you could instruct the arrhythmias. Now, an arrhythmia is an extra beat that comes in now and then, and the origin of those can be taken, or you have auricular fibrillation, which the impulse gets in the auricle and just keeps going around and around and around, and then it goes through what they call AV node, auricular ventricular node, and then the ventricles contract. So, but each of these, this is too much for this, but had to do with heart block and all that sort of thing. But it really started with that little wire, very, very fine. You could hardly see it. You had to have a little reflection to see it. It was that fine, and that moved, and the movement of that piece of little wire was photographed, and that was the original electrocardiograph.